Part 2. I want to tell you a story about how you can overcome the biggest giants, the largest companies, even if you're the smallest individual fighting for something, which was what I thought of myself back in time. I never agreed with people who said things can't change, that once something is established, you can't modify it or bring it down. I always thought each and every one of us had the power to change. One day, when I lost a large amount of money and I couldn't accept it and knew that what happened was not rightful, everyone refused to help me and thought that what was done, that it was impossible to do anything about it, that no one's ever won in a case like that. They thought it was a waste of my time and nerves, that I should leave this behind and move on with my life. And I was not able to agree with such an opinion. And I decided to fight because I realized I didn't have much to lose. What was to lose had already been lost. On the other hand, I had everything to win. Every time you encounter a tough situation, you need to look at what there is to lose and what there is to win. Then weigh it up. I started searching for an attorney. It was hard because everyone was afraid, very afraid of this large, giant company. And rightfully so. Such companies have a lot of power and can indeed bring anyone down. So, to sum up, no attorney wanted to have anything to do with me. Then I started searching online how to open a legal case. How could I possibly sue my opponent? And after weeks, I finally managed to put together a document which was very basic and primitive, and I went with it and filed it in court with my shaking hands. And I waited for an answer. Maybe 2 to 3 weeks later, the doorbell rang and there stood a bailiff with a lawsuit from that company and from a different city in Australia. So, not to complicate things, I had a lawsuit with them now, and I had absolutely no idea what I should do. I sat down and made one phone call after another. And I think it must have been about 20 or 30 of these calls when one of the officials I spoke with told me that what the company had done was wrong, that there's a paragraph, a clause, stating that they can't do it. He offered to send me an appropriate form to fill out and later file with the rest of the papers. One way or another, this ended and I won. It was the first time that I had won during that trial. And then, during each hearing, as my opponent's attorneys stood before the judge, they always had this one argument, which they based their entire strategy on. And it went along the lines of, "Your Honor, Mrs. Smajdor's English doesn't allow us to even understand these documents that she's been sending us." And they repeated it over and over, that they couldn't do this or that because they didn't fully comprehend what it was that I had written in those documents. So if I wrote and asked them to deliver something to me, that was their response. The judge never said a word about this. He always kept a straight face on. And once the hearing was coming to an end, he lifted his head and said, "Mrs. Smajdor, could you please be so kind as to submit those documents to me that you filed with the attorney's office? They're so neatly written, I'll use them for the report and it'll save me a lot of work." And that was all he said. And from then on, not once have I heard that my English was not good enough. So that's what a fight can develop into, and don't be mistaken as to think that I was discouraged when they said that about me. Not at all. I kept writing because I reckoned my English was good enough and they could understand it just fine. To be honest, I had a lot of problems with the vocabulary that is used in court. I wasn't always able to find the meaning of it in my native tongue. And there came a time when you had to do something that was called discovery. I searched for it online for entire weeks and I couldn't find any information as to what it was exactly. I also happened to have a neighbor who's a student of law, so I paid him a visit, but he didn't know it either, didn't encounter that term yet. So I didn't appropriately prepare because I just wasn't aware. I just didn't know what that was about. Later on, it turned out that the discovery meant gathering all documents that had basically anything to do with the trial and presenting them to the other party. So they, the gigantic company that I was involved with, prepared their documents and I had to prepare mine. I had maybe about 2 pieces of paper, and when I went to their office to see what they've prepared, I was walked into the room and presented a long table with millions of just piles of files on there, almost up to the ceiling. And I froze and said, "Well, what is this?" And the attorney said, "Well, Mrs. Smajdor, that's discovery." And I said, but, and she said, "Mrs. Smajdor, every document, every telephone conversation, all of it has to be filed in court. If you haven't included it all, you will be penalized, Mrs. Smajdor." And I nearly fainted there. I ran to catch a train, barely looking around, arrived home and was so scared that that was it. I made a mistake and they would kick me out of court and it would be over. All night I gathered the documents because once you file something with the court, you can't take it back. But here's the thing, when their representative told me those were all the documents, that was the weak point. Because I then looked through all of them and it turned out there were lots kept in secret. And what I had found was more than enough evidence against them. And I won the entire case. But it was because I put my entire heart into it and I knew the case very well. And them, even being experts in everything, they didn't know the case as well as I knew it. So I just wanted to tell you all that you shouldn't give up and assume that you have no chances in anything ever. Because everything can be changed and everything is doable. So if at least some of you get some inspiration from this story, I'll be very happy about that. Don't ever allow yourself to feel fear. Do everything your heart tells you to do. What I went through gave me a lot of satisfaction and it was an extremely important experience for me. But today, I can tell you that I am not scared of anything anymore. And I won't let anybody tell me that some things can't be done and that it's not up to us. Because on the contrary, everything is up to us.